Now here again is Stanley Hauerwas. You are provocative, Dr. Hauweras. You have just lived up to your reputation. How did you feel about the Parliament of the World's Religions when it convened in 1993 in Chicago on its centennial celebration?
I had deep ambiguity about it. I think it's a kind of false atmosphere where people get to feel good about the fact that they're getting together in a way that doesn't expose deep difference.
Now, there are about 6,000 people from around the globe and 125 religions who might disagree with you on that, as well as your interpretation of the word tolerance. Can you unpack that a bit more? Because instead of our understanding other faiths, you're advising us to have other faiths understand Christians.
Well, that's a good place to start, as I'm saying. What I suggested was that it's not a question. See, when you're tolerant, you're in power. So you're tolerating someone. Do you want to be tolerated? No, you don't want to be tolerated. You want to talk to someone back in a way that you have something to say. So what tolerance does is evacuate difference. Exactly what we're going to have to start looking for is difference, and to see where it is we really come to disagreements. And what I fear in America is that Christians continue to presume they understand you, but you don't understand us. And so tolerance is always a kind of way of reinforcing my presumption that I'm in control, but you're not.
Well, the language of faith is a semantically bumpy road, Daniel.
Well, I was going to say, you're trying to sweep away this superiority and get us more to the humility that you were talking about, to even the table, or even the score, so to speak. Well, is that what you're alluding to?
Certainly. I certainly think that Christians have an obligation to embody the virtue of humility, which means that our first task is not to tell others how we can get along. Our first task is to listen. Just think how hard it is for Christians to listen.
Right, and I was going to ask you then, how do we do that as a community, as a church community? How do we do that better? If we're not doing it now, obviously, very well, we need to get to that place.
How we do it is, I hope, through the establishment of friendships. I think friendships are absolutely crucial if we are to discover how it is we need to tell one another what we know is true. Because you have to be willing to have your most essential convictions challenged. Now, I am a representative of Christian nonviolence, and I don't think this is possible, the kinds of friendships I'm talking about, until Christians again learn what it means to be nonviolent.
Does that go to your ideas about true discipleship?
Absolutely. That Christians, the kind of robust understanding of what it means to be a disciple of Christ, with no apologies, that I represent, could be quite arrogant, it could be quite violent, if Jesus didn't demand that we're nonviolent.
So, discipleship in the context of Bonhoeffer, the German Christian?
Of course.
Cost
yes,
of discipleship. It's costly. It's very costly.
Very costly. And it means that you're going to have to learn things about yourself you probably didn't want to learn.
Now, where did you learn that kind of discipleship growing up in Texas?
I'm not sure I did in Texas. We Texans are natural-born killers, you know. I oftentimes tell people that I'm a pacifist. I don't like the language of pacifism at all because it's so passive. But by creating expectations in other people, no matter what they think pacifism is, I hope that they will keep me true to a way of life I know I should live, even though I have no faith in my own ability to live it at all. So I learned it fundamentally through the reading the works of Karl Barth and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, as well as a great theologian named John Howard Yoder, who represented, who came from the Mennonite background.
You have said that religious diversity is the church's attempt to own pluralism.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us?
Well, I don't believe in pluralism. I think, where are you standing when you say we live in a pluralist world? You're standing in a place that you think you can look over the variety and call it pluralism. But in fact, the place you're standing isn't pluralistic. So
What do you mean?
I mean that it presupposes a standpoint that isn't subject to the description that you're making, because it assumes that you're standing in a place that allows you an overview that where the place itself isn't part of the overview. So it involves some deep philosophical issues, as a matter of fact. That's part of a change in modernity that says that, that challenges the presumption that you can have an account of what you know before you know anything. It's called foundationalism, and I'm an anti-foundationalist.
Is there some Constantinian
Yes, it's
component in that?
Foundationalism goes hand in hand with a sense that of a kind of Constantinian church that presupposes that it must make the world come out all right, because we can't trust God to do that.
Now, you want us to delete the word pluralism from our
Oh,
vocabulary?
I do. I don't think you ought to talk about pluralism. I don't think you ought to use the word tolerance. I think that we need to have much more determinative Christian vocabulary than either of those words, and those words are not Christian.
One of the other provocative statements I think you made was your ideas about Islam and how that's catapulted us into this framework of tolerance. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, people, we simply don't know anything about Islam.
Right.
And I use the example of David Burrell because we just have to produce people who are willing to subject their life to undergoing the kind of training a Muslim undergoes to be faithful to Allah. I mean, David can do that because he's so completely a Christian.
It's his confidence in his own beliefs that allows him.
So he doesn't have to be guarded about it. And of course, I mean, he's a great scholar. So that allows him to have a sense of the diversity both of Christianity and of Islam. But these are, I mean, for example, the idea that you could have a separation of church and state in Iraq. There's no church. I mean, the Ummah has no separation between what it means to faithfully worship Allah and what it means to rule in the kind of society they want Iraq to be. So the very idea that you could translate American political practices into an Islamic society is absolutely arrogance to the nth degree. Now, Christians of all people should understand that, and they should say, hold it, you know. I say I represent the Tonto principle of Christian ethics, namely that when Tonto and the Lone Ranger were surrounded by 20,000 Sioux, the Lone Ranger looked over at Tonto and said, what do you think we ought to do? And he said, what do you mean we white man? Now, we Christians have to learn we're not Americans, we're Christians.
I think we're going to have to leave it there. Very provocative stuff. Thank you for joining us today, Stanley. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.